Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Pride of the Poconos podcast. I am your host, Zach Sterniolo, joined, as always, by sports writer Shawn Suchy. Shawn, how are you doing today?
I'm well. Thanks for having me on again. How are you doing?
All right. Mike is not here this week. He is out of commission for a little bit, so we did get his picks, but he is with us in spirit today. Resting elsewhere, basically.
Yes, I'm sure he'll be back next episode.
Absolutely.
Once he gets back from Turkey.
Maybe from eating turkey. Anyway, so let's recap last week's picks real quick. I had my best week of the season so far. I went 9-1. My only loss was trusting the New York Giants again with the last-second field goal kick from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bucks won that one 25-23. Mike went 8-2. He also chose the Giants, but he also took the Chargers to beat the Eagles. The Eagles held on to win that one 26-24. And Shawn, you didn't have your worst week of the season, but another 7-3 week. You made the same mistakes that Mike made on the Chargers and the Giants, but you also took Virginia Tech for the upset against Clemson, which did not pan out as Clemson won that one 31-17.
Yeah, I took a flyer on Virginia Tech. Clemson was too good for them, but I wanted to make it, interesting. Watch that game and root for the underdog, but it didn't work out.
It wasn't a bad pick, though. I mean, Virginia Tech, especially coming into that game, they were still undefeated as well, weren't they? So, I mean, not a crazy pick, but Clemson is just too strong right now. So let's look ahead to, we've got Week 7 coming up in high school football. Some good matchups, but really a couple blowouts here potentially this weekend as well. Let's start with probably the most competitive game of the weekend and definitely the most locally interesting. We've got East Stroudsburg South at Pocono Mountain West at 2 o'clock on Saturday. That's going to be the Panthers' homecoming. South is 3-3. They're coming off a 41-25 win over Pleasant Valley. Pocono Mountain West is coming off a 52-6 blowout win against Deerhoof. Pocono West sitting at 2-4 on the season. Shawn, I'll start with you here. Who do you think is going to come out on top here on Saturday?
Yeah, I think this will be a close game. I think both offenses are similar. They're decent, but I think South's defense is better. So I'm going to go with the Cavaliers. Shawn Solomon had a huge game last week. 235 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, including a kick return touchdown. West ran for 350 last week, and South gave up 42 yards rushing. So I think whoever wins that battle in the trenches there will come out the winner, but I am going with South.
I've got the Cavaliers here as well. Again, like to your point, very similar offenses. Both use 2 running backs consistently. South using the tandem of Ryan Clark and Shawn Solomon. West using Matt Mussenden and Jonathan St. Hilaire. Hilaire ran for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns on 19 carries last week. Mussenden ran for 142 yards and 3 touchdowns on 9 carries. So really competitive offenses. I think Della Valle might be the better quarterback between him and Mikey Riator, but again, I'm trusting the Cavaliers' defense here. I think the South defense has made a lot of improvements, and the Panthers have been a little bit inconsistent on that side of the ball, so I am sticking with East Stroudsburg South to take the win there as well. But it's going to be close, I think. And Mike's pick, he also is taking East Stroudsburg South this week. Let's move on to our next game. We've got Stroudsburg on the road at William Allen. Stroudsburg sitting at 5-1, coming off of a 50-14 win over Pocono Mountain East last week. Allen sitting at 1-5. Shawn, who do you think is going to come out on top on this one?
I have Stroudsburg in this game. They're just playing good football. Allen's a weaker competition, so that their defense seems like it gets stronger as they go in the game, so that's important to see. And I think this one will likely be over in the first half. So I have Stroudsburg, and Mike also took the Mounties in this game.
Yeah, Mike did take Stroudsburg here as well, as am I. Like you said, this one's probably going to be over in the first half. We talked I think we've mentioned Chad Dorst a little bit on this podcast as a quality wide receiver, as he is, but he also made an impact as a defensive back last week, picking up a first quarter interception. That set up the Mounties' first points of the game last week, and that really, once the Mounties got rolling last week, they ran away with it. Allen has just not had any kind of real luck. I know they took down East Stroudsburg North 20-13 earlier this season, but I don't see the Canaries having anything for the Mounties this weekend. Let's move on to Pocono Mountain East at Allentown Central Catholic. The Cardinals are sitting at 3-3, and again coming off of that 50-14 loss to Stroudsburg. Allentown Central Catholic is 4-2, and they beat East Stroudsburg North 42-20 last week. I am going with the Cardinals here. You know, it's going to be tough for the Cardinals to really get past this Vikings defense, but Praise Andrews has shown consistently over these last 4 weeks that he is going to be a threat, and East Stroudsburg South was able to pull off the upset against the Vikings. I guess it was a couple weeks ago now, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. I'm going to stick with the Cardinals, so I've got Pocono Mountain East, as does Mike.
And I have Central Catholic. The Cardinals last week, in the first quarter, they looked pretty good. Their offense was moving the ball, and their defense was making stops, but the wheels kind of fell off, and then they had a couple turnovers, and the Mounties just overwhelmed them. And I just don't see the Cardinals playing 4 quarters against Central Catholic's defense, and I got to go with the Vikings here in this game.
Let's move on to our next game. We've got Deeriff on the road at Pleasant Valley. Both of these teams enter this contest 1-5. Pleasant Valley, again, coming off of that 41-25 loss to East Stroudsburg South last week. Deeriff is coming off a 35-7 loss to Liberty last week. Shawn, who have you got in this one?
I have Pleasant Valley, decimated by injuries still, but Deeriff hasn't been great this season. Defense is giving up a ton of yards and points. Since their win against North, they've given up almost 40 points per game. Their last 3 games, they've been outscored 126-40. I think PV will take them out at home. I think Moon and Michael Brown will have to carry the load and make some plays, but I think PV will win a shootout.
I'm going with Pleasant Valley here as well. They were a lot more competitive last week against East Stroudsburg South than I anticipated. I don't know if that was because of a couple botched plays on special teams from East Stroudsburg South or what, but sophomore quarterback Aiden McHugh got his first career start last week, and I mean he worked a ton. 41 passes, completed I believe 21 or 22 of them. He looked solid. He was getting some really nice passes out there. He threw for, let me see here, threw for 201 yards in his first start. I was impressed, honestly. And against Deeriff, I feel like they're going to be able to do a little bit more against the defense like that. That's obviously, to Shawn's point, been just blown out, frankly, these last 3 weeks. So I've got Pleasant Valley here as well. Meanwhile, Mike is going with the upset here, if you want to call it that. They're both 1-5, but Mike is going Deeriff on this one as well. Let's move on to our next game. We've got East Stroudsburg North on the road at Easton. Easton is 3-3. They're coming off of the 24-17 loss against Bethlehem Catholic. East Stroudsburg North sitting 0-6. They are coming off of that 42-20 loss to ACC. Shawn, who have you got in this one?
Yeah, coming off that close loss to Bethlehem Catholic, I think Easton's going to come out flying. Fortunately, it's going to be a long day for the Timberwolves, so I'm going with Easton. Yeah,
I am too. Took the words right out of my mouth. Easton is going to be coming out here with maybe a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They're sitting at 500. They've had some close losses here. They lost to Freedom, I think it was week 2, 13-10. You know, they've had some really close games. This one will not be one of them. I really think Easton's just going to run away with this one. And Mike is going with the Red Rovers here as well. So all 3 of us taking Easton over East Stroudsburg North. Let's move on to NCAA Division II college football. We've got Millersville on the road at East Stroudsburg University. That's going to be on Thursday night, actually. So as a Marauder yourself, Shawn,
Yes.
who have you got in this game?
I think it'll be a tight game. Millersville has lost 14 of their last 16 games against ESU, including their 5 straight games. But I think this year is their chance to beat ESU. They're looking good this year. Only 1 win, but their losses are tight. They were with Bloomsburg last week, and actually Stroudsburg grad.
Yeah, Jordan Villafane.
Yes, Villafane.
Defensive back.
He made a great play at the end of the game to prevent the Marauders from tying that game up. The Marauders have started 3 different quarterbacks this year.
Wow.
So that's not something you'd like to see normally. But Tony Staffari is going to get the start. And last year, he started his first game against ESU and kind of shredded them up a little bit. 250 yards passing, 160 rushing yards, and a loss. But the Marauders defense, 300 yards rushing last week. So I think Jamar Anderson's going to be a key for ESU. So I got to take the Warriors on Thursday Night Football.
There you go. Okay, so that was a long roundabout way to. Yeah, you had me convinced there you were going to go with Millersville, but sticking with the Warriors. Okay, I am sticking with ESU here as well. Coming off of a 33-13 win over Cheney last week, they really needed that to get out of their rut. They weren't going to lose to Cheney, let's be honest, but Anderson, to your point, ran for 110 yards on the ground last week with a touchdown. Quarterback Ben Moser went 10 for 19 for 139 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. You know, I think this is a game where Denny Dowds is going to have those Warriors coming out, making sure that they don't lose any of that momentum that they lost in the 3 weeks prior to Cheney. So I really expect ESU to come out on top on this one. Again, Millersville sitting at 1-4 on the season, 0-2 in the conference. The Warriors are 2-3. They won last week and they won their home opener, or their season opener rather, but lost all 3 in between. So they're 1-1 in the conference. I think the Warriors are going to come out here and try to prove that they're a contender. So all 3 of us are actually going with ESU, as Mike has picked the Warriors as well. Let's move on to our one Division I game this week. We've got Penn State on the road. They're undefeated at 5-0 at Northwestern 2-2. Shawn, who do you think is going to come out on top here?
Going Penn State. Could be a tough game at Northwestern, Big Ten matchup. Barkley leads college football in all-purpose yards, but I don't think their defense is getting enough credit. 14 takeaways this year. The Lions get next week off, so it could be a nice little game for them to go into the break before Michigan.
Right, that's going to be a huge game against Michigan in 2 weeks. And to your point, I think they've also shut out 2 teams so far this season. I know that those opponents were overwhelmed for sure by the Nittany Lions, but I'm going Penn State here as well. Northwestern is a tough place to play football at, as Mike pointed out when we spoke to him yesterday. But I think I think the Nittany Lions here are going to come out on top. I don't think they're going to be overpowered or too flustered by anything, especially coming off of a 45-14 win over another Big Ten team last week in Indiana. So I've got Penn State taking down Northwestern, as does Mike, as does Shawn. Let's move on to the NFL. We've got the Cardinals on the road at the Eagles. The Cardinals beat the 49ers 18-15 in overtime last week. The Eagles came out on top against the Chargers 26-24. Shawn, who you got?
The Cardinals are known for being terrible on the East Coast, and they're at Philly, 1 p.m. start. The Cardinals were 0-4 last season in 1 o'clock games, and they were blown out in every single one of them. The Eagles looked pretty good last week. Their defense giving up a little too much big plays, a lot of injuries in the secondary, but their running game is taking over, and the Cardinals barely beat the 49ers. They struggled against the Colts, so I got to go with the Eagles here.
Yeah, I don't think as a team right now in this NFL, you can afford to struggle against the 49ers and the Colts and expect to take down this Philadelphia team. I think Jim Schwartz has done a phenomenal job with his defense this season, despite the injuries. LeGarrette Blount, to your point, Shawn, had a monster game last week against LA, and one really powerful run there too. I'm going Philly as well. That was a great stat about how bad the Cardinals have been in 1 o'clock games on the East Coast. So I don't think that anything changes there. I'm going Philly. And Mike is also taking the Eagles to take down Arizona. Let's move on to... this should be an interesting game. The Jets are on the road in Cleveland at the Browns. The Jets sitting at 2-2, which is, I would say, a surprise at this point. I think everyone kind of wrote them off before the season began. So now they are, I think, tied for second in the AFC East with the Patriots of all teams, as the Bills lead that division. The Jets are coming off of a 23-20 overtime win against the Jacksonville Jags. And the Browns sitting at 0-4 after a 31-7 loss to the Cincinnati Bengals. I am sticking with the Jets here. I know. But in all seriousness, I mean, two wins this season. I don't think the Jags had any reason to lose that game last week, especially after topping the Ravens the week before 44-7 in London. So I think that was a solid game for the Jets. I don't think it's all cured all of a sudden, but I don't think the Browns are going to be too much of a problem if Jacksonville wasn't for New York. Shawn?
Yeah, it seems like the Jets and Bills are the most relevant team in New York nowadays.
Wow. Okay. So you had to get your weekly dig in there. All right. So we don't have a Giants game to pick this week. Well, at least not on paper. So, all right, fine. Whatever. Have that.
Yes. So if the Jets win this week, they'll have a winning record, and I just do not see that happening. They are not a good football team. I don't think even Jets fans want them to win this game. They need a top pick. They're at the dog pound. The Browns are going to come out and win their first game against the Jets. They got their number 1 pick playing, finally, Myles Garrett, and I got to go with the Browns here.
That's a convincing argument. Wow. Yeah, I don't see any flaw in the logic, but I'm still sticking with the Jets here. And Mike has decided to go with New York here as well. Let's move on to our last pick of the week. We've got the Packers on the road at the Dallas Cowboys. Green Bay coming off of a 35-14 win over the Chicago Bears last Thursday. The Dallas Cowboys coming off of a 35-30 loss against the Rams. Shawn, I think I know where you're going here, but go for it anyway.
I originally picked Dallas, actually, but I changed my mind, which probably isn't a good thing.
Okay.
You got to stick with your gut. So if anyone wants to bet on this game, I'd take the Cowboys, but I'm going Green Bay. They had a lot of injuries, but they're getting those guys back. They're not long-term injuries. They have their 2 tackles practicing this week, Bulaga and Bakhtiari. Adams somehow is fine. Basically, he's going to play. Montgomery, he's got some rib issues, but he's practicing as well. So Packers are full strength, and I'm going to go with the best quarterback of all time, Rodgers. The Packers will win this game. They don't have any issues playing at Dallas. It's cakewalk for them. So
subtle, I like it. First of all, I don't know how Devontae Adams is okay after that hit from Trevathan. I also saw that suspension was knocked from 2 games down to 1. That makes no sense to me because that was a vicious hit.
Yeah, it was.
So it's a miracle that Adams is even thinking about playing this week. The Cowboys coming off of that loss to LA last week really puts me off from them. I'm sticking with Green Bay here as well. You know, I know that the Bears are pretty. They're kind of lowly in that NFC North, but it was still a solid win for Green Bay, and I see a little bit more consistency with the Packers than I do the Cowboys at this point. Plus, I just hate the Cowboys to begin with, so absolutely I'm sticking with Green Bay. Mike is also taking the Packers on this one. So, just to recap, let's take a look. We've got East Stroudsburg South at Pocono Mountain West. All 3 of us are taking East Stroudsburg South over the Panthers there. We've got Stroudsburg on the road at William Allen. All 3 of us taking Stroudsburg to take down the Canaries. Pocono Mountain East at ACC. Mike and I are both jumping on board with the Cardinals, while Shawn is sticking with ACC. Deereth is on the road at Pleasant Valley. Shawn and I have Pleasant Valley. Mike is going for Deereth in that one. East Stroudsburg North on the road at Easton. We are all taking Easton there. We've all got ESU over Millersville, Penn State over Northwestern, the Eagles over the Cardinals, Jets over the Browns. I have that. Mike has that. And Shawn is taking the Browns to get their first win of the season. And we are all going Green Bay over the Cowboys. That's all we've got for today's episode, with our producer Keith Stevenson and Mike both out for next week as well. We will be taking the week off from the podcast, but be sure to check out our Week 8 picks in next Friday's Pocono Record. That's going to be on October 13th. Our next episode will feature another special guest on Wednesday, October 18th, and then we'll be back with our football picks in podcast form on Thursday, October 19th. To find all of our links, you can find us on Twitter at Pocono Podcast. This podcast can be found on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment wherever and however you are listening, because we want to hear from you, our listeners, and see what you have to say. And if you subscribe, you'll never miss one of our newest episodes. This podcast has been brought to you by PoconoRecord.com/contests. Last year we gave away over $20,000 in prizes, so be sure to visit often and see what we are giving away next. Again, that is PoconoRecord.com/contests. That's all we've got for today. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, take care.